Hey, welcome to Mooney Reads. My name is Beck, and today I'm going to be talking about some of the books that I'll be reading in November. Now, for this TBR, I'm going to be talking about two of the readathons that I'll be doing, and they're the two that are month-long, the Indigathon and Nonfiction November. I will be participating in a few other readathons, but I'll be putting out those TBRs a little bit later. So I'll start out with the Indigathon, which was made to commemorate Indigenous Heritage Month in the United States. I'll put links to the hosts' channels as well as the Indigathon Twitter in the description. But the whole point of the Indigathon is to read books by Indigenous authors. The hosts have created a bingo sheet to go along with this, and all four of the books that I'm picking fit more than one of these prompts, but I'm just going to go through and talk about the books. So first, I'll be reading Our History is the Future, Standing Rock versus the Dakota Access Pipeline and the Tradition of Indigenous Resistance by Nick Estes. So this book basically looks at Indigenous people's past and how it's led up to the present and how all of that stuff is connected. I heard some really wonderful things about it from Brianna over at Brianna's Library. I'll put their video in the description. But it seems really wonderful. This is, I think, the one that I'm most looking forward to this month in general, and I will be reading that one on ebook. The next book that I have for the Indigathon is Braiding Sweetgrass, Indigenous Wisdom, Scientific Knowledge, and the Teachings of Plants by Robin Wall Kimmerer. So this is another Indigenous nonfiction, and it's looking at different things that Indigenous people have known, how it relates to science and kind of what we can learn from all of that. I've seen a number of people talk about this on Instagram, so it's been one that I've been considering reading for a while. I will probably be reading either the audiobook or the ebook, just depending on how things go, through Hoopla. I will also be reading Islands of Decolonial Love by Leanna Simpson, and this is a collection of short stories. This is one that I've heard fewer people talking about than Braiding Sweetgrass, but I've seen it going around a little bit. I'm fairly certain I remember seeing it in a recommendations video, so I will put that in the description if I end up finding that. And I will be listening to this on audio through Hoopla. Then the final book that I have for the Indigathon, I am like 50% sure I'm going to read it. It completely depends on how things go, and I'll explain once I talk about the book some. That is Firesong by Adam Garnet Jones. A big part of this book, part of it is, that the main character is finding out they're gay, and they're getting together with someone, but it's on this backdrop of losing someone and dealing with grief. And just because of how November is for me historically, my granddad passed away 2 years ago, the day before Thanksgiving. Last year, shit went down around Thanksgiving. Either this is going to be the perfect read for me, or I'm not going to be able to touch it. I would like to think that it's going to be the former and be a perfect read, but we'll just see what happens. I may read this. I'm hoping to read this. I've heard some good stuff about it, so I'm looking forward to it. If not, I will try it again in a few more months. And I am taking full advantage of fall with this drink, in case anyone's wondering. This is a chai pumpkin tea with a little bit of almond milk, and it's really great. So next is Nonfiction November. And this was an initiative that was put together to try to encourage people to read more nonfiction. And according to the host, whose video I will link in the description, the only thing that you have to do to participate in this is to read a nonfiction book. And clearly, with my Indigathon TBR, that will be accomplished. But, they would also encourage people, if you read a lot of nonfiction already, to try to read more nonfiction. And my reading varies a lot from year to year, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that I have been in school some years, and, I started out in English, so I read more fiction then, and then I went to sociology, where I definitely read more nonfiction. And this is the first, well, it's not a normal year, but it's the first year that I've had free reign to read whatever, and I've ended up with about a third nonfiction. So the bulk of this TBR is definitely going to be nonfiction so that I can read more than a third. Now, even though throughout this whole TBR that I'll be talking about, I've only got the one fiction book, I will be adding some more fiction because I'm going to be participating in a graphic novel oriented readathon, and I know I'll put fiction in there and possibly in the other ones. The rest are a little bit up in the air. But the goal for me is to read at least a third or more nonfiction. Really, I will be happy if I just finish a few nonfiction books, because my issue recently has been starting and not finishing. So if I was smart, I might just put a couple of books on here so that I could finish. But instead I am extra. So I have 2 books per prompt, and I only used one of the nonfiction books from Indigathon to apply to all of those. So the prompts that they put together are optional, and you can interpret them however you want to. So the first prompt is time, and for that I used Our History is the Future, which I've already discussed for that prompt. It's talking about history, that's a point in time. It's even talking about how time relates, like different pieces of time relate to each other. So that clearly fits. The other book that I'll be reading is Are You My Mother by Alison Bechdel. And this is a memoir that focuses on Alison Bechdel's relationship with her mother. I've read Fun Home and loved Fun Home. It's sitting on the shelf behind me because it's one of my favorites. I've heard that Are You My Mother isn't as good, but I'd still really like to read it and see what's going on. And that is a graphic novel, for those who don't know. So I'm going to be accessing that through Hoopla. The next prompt that we have is movement. And the first book that I have for that is Tinderbox, The Untold Story of the Upstairs Lounge Fire and the Rise of Gay Liberation by Robert Feileser. Now, I've talked about this book before, and it's been on a TBR before. I've started it. I'm 30 pages? I'm 30 pages in, but I also read all of the preface stuff, which isn't included in the page count, so really I read closer to 50 pages. And I was super stoked to read this book. I'll link my video, but really I'm going to link my Instagram post is what you need to read if you're actually interested in why I like this book so much. I have a specific, I guess, relationship with like how I found out about the New Orleans Upstairs Lounge Fire, and a lot of feelings around the lack of attention that had been brought to it at the time that I had learned about it. So it was really impactful for me to see a book that was actually about it. So I really do want to finish this one. And I figured that it fit in with movement because it's talking about the rise of gay liberation. So this is how this event fits into the LGBT movement as a whole. The other book that I have for movement is Freedom is a Constant Struggle, Ferguson, Palestine, and the Foundations of a Movement by Angela Davis. This has the word movement in the title. And it's about how different movements across different countries impact each other. I know that Angela Davis talks a lot about like the prison industrial complex, and I think this kind of maybe even goes beyond that. It looks at the prison industrial complex probably in other countries, but also kind of in general the way that people haven't achieved freedom through various justice systems and different things like that. This is a pretty short book. It's less, with the index, if you don't include the index, it's less than 150 pages long. So I think that I should get through it, but I know that it's going to pack a punch. So even though it's very short, it's going to be really important. Honestly, I almost started it this month, largely because of all of the stuff that's been going on. Of course, like there's been the Black Lives Matter movement going on in the United States, and then everything going on in Nigeria right now, and then everything, of course, this talks about Palestine, so that's connected as well. It's going to be a timely read, regardless of when I started. Unfortunately, it was relevant when she wrote it, and it continues to be relevant because shit has not changed enough. The next prompt for Nonfiction November is buzz. And I interpreted this in a couple of ways. The first book that I have relates to buzz because it is kind of related to things that are popular, people who are making a buzz, if that makes sense. And that is Queer Advantage, Conversations with LGBTQ+ Leaders on the Power of Identity by Andrew Gelwicks. So it is my understanding that he is talking with a number of different LGBT people who are either in leadership positions or are really well known. They're making a buzz, they've gotten people's attention, and he's writing a book about them. I was kindly sent a finished copy of this from Hachette Go, so I'm super stoked to get into this. So the next book that I have for the prompt of buzz, I initially considered it because black and yellow is shown prominently on the cover, and bees are black and yellow, so there's the buzz connection there. But part of the reason I ended up solidifying this pick, because I had plenty of black and yellow books, a surprising number actually. But as I was going through this shelf, it is on my religion shelf, and I thought that it could go with it, and immediately the song from Jesus Christ Superstar, What's the Buzz, starts playing in my head. So naturally, I couldn't not pick it, as distant as that relationship with the prompt is. The book is The Color of Compromise, The Truth About the American Church's Complicity in Racism by Jemar Tisby. This was actually on my TBR, I want to say for February, and I never got around to it, but I think this is super important. A lot of what I focus on in terms of religion and stuff like that is how religion can be used to empower people and different things like that. And any religion, especially something like Christianity, cannot be used in a positive way if the really deep sins that are within the system of the religion aren't addressed. And racism is one of the most glaring ones. So I'm going to read more about that. The final prompt for Nonfiction November is discovery. The first book that I have for that prompt is The Sociological Imagination by C. Wright Mills. Now, I have read pieces of this before. I have read the first chapter of it a number of times because I assigned this for my Intro to Sociology class, not the whole book, but just the introductory chapter. And I've not gotten the chance to sit and just read the whole thing from cover to cover, but the whole idea of the sociological imagination is basically the ability to put yourself within your sociological context. What are people who are in a similar position to you like? What do they have access to? What do you have access to because of your position? It's thinking critically about that. There are also elements in thinking sociologically where you should also consider other sorts of context, like history. And C. Wright Mills' position, at least, in that first chapter, is talking about how you have to picture yourself in that so that you can picture other people. And that is an important step, when you're a sociologist. If you can't think of yourself within the sociological framework, then I think that prohibits you from doing a lot of other stuff. So it's an important concept. I don't know what the rest of the book is going to be like, but it's not very long. It's about 200 pages. So I think I should be able to get through this, and it's one that I probably should have already taken the time to read in its entirety. And I have this relating to discovery because it's about discovering parts of yourself and discovering things about society. The final book that I have for Nonfiction November is Assata, an Autobiography. So this is the biography of Assata Shakur, who is a member of the Black Panther Party, and she was falsely accused of killing a police officer. This book goes back and forth between when she was shot and framed for shooting the police officer. It goes between that and between her life in general. So it starts when she's little. And I'd actually started this in December and never got around to finishing it. So it is my goal to finish this before the end of the year. And I have it matched up with Discovery. Partly because I sort of stumbled upon Assata Shakur in a number of ways, and I mean, in general, learning about the Black Panther Party, I only really found out much about them because I was looking through other civil rights documentaries and found one on the Black Panther Party and kind of stumbled onto it that way. So I guess you could say that it's a discovery that I made because nobody told me about it, like in school, when they probably should have told me. And she's also a figure that just in general isn't acknowledged, so the world should discover her a little bit better and read her works. Now, I do have one more book that is a nonfiction that I know that I'll be reading the end of the month. I know that I will be doing at least 2 other readathons. The Transathon is having a shorter version, and the Queer Lit Readathon starts at the very end of November. And for one of those, probably the Transathon, I will be reading Surpassing Certainty by Janet Mock. Janet Mock is a journalist, a director. She does a lot of things. I read her other memoir, Redefining Realness, several years back, but it was a really good experience, so I want to get around to this second one. I'm not sure what else I'll be reading for those 2 readathons because I don't think that they all have the prompts out yet and everything like that, so you'll get to see a video for that. And this book will at least be one of the nonfiction books that you will see within those. So that is all that I have for the readathons to last the duration of November. If you've read any of these, let me know what you thought about them down in the comments below. And if you're participating in the Indigathon or Nonfiction November, let me know one of the books that you're excited about. Thank you all so much for watching. Bye. I really hope that this video doesn't look smoky or weird. I don't think my camera quality is good enough to pick it up anyways. My intelligent self decided to make tea, and in doing so, turned on the wrong burner, burnt my Tupperware lid and my hand, and now my house smells like plastic, and there is smoke. Thankfully, my smoke alarm didn't go off, or maybe not thankfully. Hopefully it works.